Good morning students. In the last classes we have discussed the photoelectric effect and Einstein explanation or Einstein photoelectric equation. So Einstein explained on basis of photon theory of light. Now the Einstein equation is verified experimentally by Millikan. That means how he verified, I will explain briefly. He So, if light is made to, radiation is made to incident on this photometal, electrons are emitted and the emitted electrons, if have sufficient energy, they will move towards this electrode and they constitute current, and that current is absorbed through this microammeter. Actually, this is the arrangement. So how Millikan verified this is, he made to incident radiation of different frequencies on this same metal A. So he fixed this photometal and made to incident light of different frequencies. That means if we consider a visible ray, frequency means is inversely proportional to wavelength, as we know. Frequency is inversely. Now the wavelength means color of light, as you know. So in visible light, wavelength refers to color. So he made to incident different colors of light on this photometal so that electrons are emitted. So how he experimentally verified is, first thing, he made to incident different frequencies of light on this photometal. Suppose assume that if the frequency is nu1, so that electrons are emitted from this metal and they constitute a current here. If they move towards, even though without applying any voltage, the electrons having sufficient energy will have moved. That means sufficient kinetic energy will move and constitute current. Those can be observed through this microammeter. Now, if we apply a negative potential, that means a retarding potential to this photoelectrons, now slowly increasing this negative potential, the reading in this ammeter gradually decreases. And at a particular voltage, this current becomes zero. Suppose that is stopping potential we call. Okay? When this photocurrent becomes zero, the corresponding negative potential is called stopping potential V0. So now for this particular frequency, the corresponding frequency is noted as 1. Now second part, next one is light of frequency nu2 is made to incident on this metal. Again, light of frequency nu2 is made to incident on this, and correspondingly same procedure is repeated. That means again first this potential is made 0 so that current flows through this ammeter, and now negative potential is increased slowly, and at a particular potential value this current becomes 0, and he noted for this as W, stopping potential for the second frequency. In this way he slowly changed for different frequencies, he got different stopping potentials. For different frequencies of light, he got different stopping potentials. So what Millikan made is, he draw a graph between frequency and stopping potential, taking frequency on the x-axis and stopping potential on y-axis. He draw a graph and the graph is like this. Here he draw by taking the frequencies on x-axis and stopping potential on y-axis. He got a straight line like this. Okay, now second part, he made different number of experiments with changing this photometal. That means same experimental procedure is repeated for a different material, for different photomaterial. In that case also, by drawing the frequency and stopping potential graph, he got the same curve like straight line. So now how he has verified is, now we have this Einstein equation, h nu is equal to h nu naught plus kinetic energy K, that is, but if we write this kinetic energy is equal to EV, K is equal to half mv square is equal to, at the stopping potential this kinetic energy is converted into potential energy. So we can write like this. So h nu is equal to h nu naught plus EV naught. So EV naught is equal to h nu minus h nu naught. So V0 is equal to h by E into nu minus h by E into nu naught. Okay. Now this Einstein photoelectric equation transform it in this form. So stopping potential is equal to h by E into nu minus h by E into nu naught. That means this nu naught is same for a particular material. This is a constant physical quantity for a material because threshold frequency is same for a particular material. So this is constant. So if we draw a graph between this frequency nu and stopping potential, this appears to be like y equal to mx plus c form. That means this equation, if we draw a graph between frequency and stopping potential, this is similar to a straight line like this, a equation to a straight line. Similarly, we got this equation, experimentally also we got the same straight line. That means this C is equal to this one. And the slope of this curve M is similar to h by E. So slope of this curve is h by E. So if we calculate the slope of this curve, this is equal to h by E. So experimentally it is verified that by drawing a graph between frequency and stopping potential, experimentally also we got the same straight line. Theoretically it is also a straight line because this equation is in the form y equal to mx plus c. So similar graphs, the straight line is obtained experimentally also, and according to this equation the slope of the straight line must be h by E. So experimentally also it is verified that the slope of this line is equal to h by E. In this way, Millikan verified the Einstein equation. So the theory and practical are same results. So this is verified. So in this way, Einstein photoelectric equation is verified. Now, this Einstein photoelectric equation is experimentally verified and the theoretical and experimental values are in good agreement. That means here while deriving this equation, Einstein assumed that light is in the form of particle photon. That means in this derivation Einstein considered that the light is in the form of light, particle. Okay, so on this basis only he derived this equation and explained the photoelectric effect. And similarly another effect is also called Compton effect, which is also explained on the basis of this photon. That means while explaining this photoelectric effect and Compton effect, light is considered as a particle. That light particle is called photon of energy h nu. Okay, but interference, diffraction and polarization, these properties give the evidence for the wave nature of light. Okay, so interference, diffraction, polarization give evidence, experimental evidence for the wavelength of wave nature of light, and also we can measure the wavelength of light, experiment based on those phenomena. And that wave theory, that means electromagnetic wave theory has failed in explaining photoelectric effect and Compton effect. And these two effects are explained on the basis of particle nature of light. So now some properties are explained on the basis of wave property, and these two properties are explained on wave particle nature of light. So it is agreed that light possesses both particle nature and wave nature. Light exhibits both particle nature and wave nature, and that is called dual nature of light. It's called dual nature of light. That means light exhibits both particle nature and wave nature, and that is called dual nature of light. But it cannot exhibit both the natures simultaneously. That means at the same time it can't exhibit both wave nature and particle. When it is exhibiting particle nature, it can't exhibit wave nature. If it exhibits wave nature, it can't exhibit particle nature. Okay. Now when it exhibits wave nature, when it exhibits particle nature is when the light interacts with light, that means radiation interacts with radiation, then it exhibits wave nature. When radiation interacts with matter, it exhibits particle nature. Okay. Now if you take the example interference, interference means two waves, superposition of two waves from two different sources. That means a light radiation from two different sources S1 and S2 meet at a point, and here due to the superposition, that we call it as interference, and diffraction is also same, interference of secondary wavelets. So in this phenomena, that means a light wave is interacting with a light wave, a light is interacting with light, radiation is interacting with radiation. In that case it exhibits wave nature. But in the case of photoelectric effect or Compton effect, in this radiation is interacting with material particle electron. It is the interaction between radiation and particle. In this case, radiation exhibits particle nature. So, okay, when radiation interacts with radiation, it exhibits wave nature. When radiation interacts with matter, it exhibits particle nature. But it cannot exhibit both the properties simultaneously. So, and this is called dual nature of light, or also a wave particle duality. Okay. So, after that, a scientist named de Broglie extended this wave particle duality to material particles, moving objects. So what he argued that when radiation is exhibiting particle nature, that means radiation which is considered to be a wave is exhibiting particle nature, then the particles are also exhibit wave nature, because nature, he argued that nature loves symmetry. By symmetry, when radiation is exhibiting, that means radiation which is considered to be a wave exhibiting particle nature, then particles also associated with waves. So his hypothesis is when particles exhibit wave nature. So according to this de Broglie hypothesis, all the moving objects are associated with waves. All the moving objects are associated with waves, and those waves are called matter waves or de Broglie waves. Okay, what his hypothesis is, what de Broglie's hypothesis is, all the moving objects, as radiation is exhibiting particle nature, all the particles which are moving also associated with a wave, and that wave he termed as matter wave. So all the moving particles are associated with waves called matter waves or de Broglie waves. Okay, and he calculated the wavelength as, that means wavelength of the wave associated with a moving object is lambda is equal to h by mv or h by p. That means mass into velocity means momentum. So according to de Broglie, the wavelength associated with a wave of a moving object is equal to h by the momentum p. Okay, so wavelength of the de Broglie wave is h by p. So how he derived is, first as per photon, suppose assume photon, that means radiation, assume a radiation of energy h nu, that means a photon of energy E is equal to h nu. Okay, now this is equal to h nu means hc by lambda. Okay, consider he assumed that a photon of energy E is equal to h nu, that is hc by lambda. So by Einstein relativistic correction, E is equal to mc square. Now comparing these two, h nu is equal to, that is hc by lambda is equal to mc square. So this squiggle gets cancelled. That means lambda is equal to h by mc, that equal to h by p. Now the wavelength of radiation is equal to ratio of Planck's constant to the momentum of the photon. So now de Broglie extended this. Suppose if a moving object of mass m moving with the velocity v, here it is considered to be a photon. Photon means radiation. Now applying the same condition, if a body of mass m moving with a velocity v, a body of mass m moving with a velocity v, then its wavelength is lambda is equal to h by mv. Just similarity only. Here it is the momentum of the photon, mass of the photon, velocity of light. That means it is the momentum of the photon. So here we have considered a photon. So the wavelength of the photon is h by its momentum. So same analogous to that, he assumed that the mass of the particle and velocity of the particle is v, then lambda is equal to h by mv. So in this way he derived the de Broglie wavelength as lambda is equal to h by momentum. Okay, so this is de Broglie hypothesis. So what is de Broglie hypothesis? All the moving objects are associated with a wave called matter wave, and the wavelength of that matter wave is given by lambda is equal to h by mv or h by p, momentum of the body. Okay, and this wavelength is called de Broglie wavelength, the de Broglie wavelength of the particle. Okay, it is called de Broglie wavelength. Now we consider, suppose as we know the kinetic energy K is equal to half mv square, and that is equal to half m square v square into m by m. You can write like this. So this is half m square v square by m, that is, but m square v square is nothing but square of momentum. So p square by 2m. So kinetic energy is equal to capital K is equal to p square by 2m. Now this implies p is equal to square root of 2m into capital K kinetic energy. So now we can write the de Broglie wavelength in terms of kinetic energy of the particle. So we can write like this also, that is equal to h by square root of 2mk. This h by square root of 2mk. Now, so according to de Broglie, because as radiation is exhibiting particle nature, particles also, that means as radiation which is a wave is exhibiting particle nature. So particles, moving particles or moving objects also associated with the wave, they also exhibit wave nature. That is de Broglie hypothesis. So now a question arises is, then we are also moving, we are also material bodies. As I am moving, there is a wave associated with me. Then where is that wave? Can we experience that wave? We are all moving objects, we are also moving, we have mass, we are moving means we possess certain velocity, we move with certain velocity. Then according to de Broglie, there must be a wave along with us as we are moving. So how we can't experience that wave? We can't experience a wave associated with us. So why we can't experience? So just I will explain why we are not experience a wave. Now I will explain with example. So take the example, a cricket ball, assume a ball of mass, assume 1 kg mass. Assume a ball of mass 1 kg. Suppose it is bowled or it is thrown with a velocity. Suppose usually in cricket ball, the bowler may bowl with an average velocity. Assume that it is 108 km per hour. Assume he has thrown with a velocity 108 km per hour, means 108 into 5 by 18, that is 1/6, that is approximately 30 meter per second. Okay, so assume a ball of mass 1 kg thrown with a velocity 30 meter per second. Okay, as this ball is moving with 30 meter per second, there is a wave associated with it, that moving ball. So the wavelength of that particular moving ball is given by, according to our de Broglie hypothesis, lambda is equal to h by mv. Now h value is 6.625 into 10 to the power minus 34 by mv. So 1 kg in 30 meter per second. So this is approximately, we cancel it 2.208 by 10 means 0.2208 into 10 to the power minus 34. Now we consider an electron. Electron of mass 9.1 10 power minus 31 kg. An electron of mass 9.1 into 10 to the power minus 31 kg. It is, suppose electron can be accelerated, that means its velocity can be increased by applying a potential, positive potential. Suppose assume that a positive potential of 100 volt is applied to accelerate this electron. That means in that case we can write the kinetic energy of the electron is equal to applied potential into electron charge, as we know this equation. So now from this we can write as half mv square k is equal to p square by 2m, that equal to ev. So the 2m ev under root. So momentum of the electron can be written as 2m into ev like this. Now we substitute this equation. Now P equal to 100 volt and P is equal to, we got it as 2m into EV. Okay, now substituting in this, lambda is equal to h by P, that is 6.625 10 power minus 34 into square root of 2 into 9.1 into 10 to the power minus 31 into 1.6 into 10 to the power minus 19 into 100 volt. Assume that 100 volt. Now this is 6.625, 10 to the power minus 34 square root of this is 9.1 into 3.2 into 10 to the power minus 31 minus 20 means 10 to the power minus 25 50 minus 24, that is 6.625 by, this is approximately 9 3s are 27, that means approximately it is suppose assume that this is 9 into 3 27, if it is square root of 27 means it is approximately 5 point something, assume that 5.2, then we can cancel out it as 1.1 into 10 power minus 10 meter, here it is meter, not exactly, it is approximately. Okay, now if we consider a ball of mass m moving with a velocity v, the wavelength associated with the moving ball is 0.22 into 10 to the power minus 34 meter. Whereas if we consider an electron of mass 10 to the power minus 31 has a wavelength is equal to approximately 1 into 10 to the power minus 10 meter. If you compare these two, wavelengths, this is 10 to the power minus 34 means when we compare with the size of the body, suppose if this ball may be of diameter 3 centimeter, assume that the radius of the ball is 3 centimeter. With this 3 centimeter, this 10 to the power minus 34 is very small quantity. That means its wavelength lambda is 0.00000034. So up to 34 means it is very, very, very low value. But if we consider an electron, with the size of the electron, this 10 to the power minus 10 is comparable. Whereas here with the size of the ball, this wavelength is very small. With the size of the ball, this wavelength is very, very small quantity, is practically zero. But here, when we consider an electron, the electron has kinetic, with the size of the electron, the wavelength associated with it is significant. So in this case the wavelength is insignificant, and in this case the wavelength is significant. That means for massive bodies or macroscopic bodies, as their mass is high, the velocity associated, the wavelength associated with it is low. That means in the massive bodies, even 1 kg mass moving with velocity, we have such a low value. Suppose if we consider a heavy mass of 100 kg, then what happens is, even it is lower value. That means, so this mass of the body increases, this wavelength decreases. That's why for heavy massive bodies we can't experience a matter wave, because its wavelength is insignificant in that case. So in that case, for massive or macroscopic bodies, they exhibit particle nature rather than the wave nature. Okay, because their wave nature is not, their particle nature is dominant, because the size of the body, when we compare with the size of the body, its wavelength is very small physical value, a small quantity. But if we consider an electron, in this case, it is significant. Because with the size of the electron, this wavelength 10 to the power minus 10 meter is comparable. In this case, it is significant. So, not only electron, the microscopic particles or atomic particles like electrons, protons, neutron, alpha particle, all these are as lighter particles. So, the wavelength associated with them will be comparable with the size of the particles. So, in those cases, they exhibit wave nature. So in this case we can consider an electron. Suppose if here we are considering electron. So electron can be treated as a wave rather than a particle. But here in this case ball, we can't consider it as a wave because its wavelength is lower value, it is insignificant in this case. So that's why, okay, all the moving objects are associated with waves, and those waves are matter waves, but those matter waves are insignificant in the case of massive bodies like microscopic bodies, but significant in the case of microscopic particles, such as electron, proton, like that. So that we can differentiate with the wavelength. That means massive particles, the wavelength is small, so that they exhibit particle nature. But in case of microscopic particles like electrons, the wavelength is significant, their matter wavelength is significant, or de Broglie wavelength is significant. So in this case, they exhibit wave nature. Okay? So according to de Broglie, all the moving objects are associated with waves, and those waves are called matter waves. But the wavelength of those matter waves are insignificant in the case of massive bodies or heavy bodies, but they are significant in the case of lighter bodies like electrons, protons. Okay, this is the this is about matter waves. So matter waves are the waves associated with moving objects, and the wavelength of those matter waves is h by momentum. That means ratio of Planck's constant by momentum. So this particular wavelength of this matter wave depends on mass of the body. That's why for heavier particles, the wavelength of this de Broglie wavelength is insignificant, but for lighter particles it is significant. Okay, that's why we won't experience a matter wave along with us. Okay. Now other forms of this de Broglie wavelength, as h is equal to, lambda is equal to h by mv, and we can write the same equation as h by p, and that is h by square root of 2mk, where capital K is kinetic energy. Okay. Now, if we consider a gas molecules, which are also small particles, it is also microscopic particle. So, if we consider a gas molecule, in that case, we can replace this kinetic energy by, we know that the kinetic energy of a gaseous molecule is 3 by 2 kb into T, where kb is the Boltzmann constant. So we can replace this kinetic energy for the case of gaseous molecules. We can write the de Broglie wavelength as h by square root of 2m into 3 by 2 kb into T. That is h by 3m kbt under root. So this is also equal to h by square root of 3m kb into T. Okay. So for a ordinary particle, we can consider the lambda is equal to h by mv, that h by p. So p can be written as e by 2mk, and that can be written as h by 2mk into T. So for a gas molecule, the kinetic energy is 3 by 2 kbt. So we can write this equation as 3m into kbt. Okay. Now we calculate the wavelength associated with a electron, general formula. Now the wavelength de Broglie wavelength of electron. Okay. Now assume that m is the mass of the electron and e is the charge of the electron. Then electron is accelerated by a potential capital V. When an electron is accelerated by a potential capital V, then we can write the equation as half mv square is equal to ev, where small v is the velocity, mass, charge, accelerating potential. So assume that an electron of mass m, charge e is accelerated through a potential v, so that the gain in the potential and kinetic energy is v. Now we can write this equation as p square by 2m, as we know. So kinetic energy can be written as momentum square by 2m, that equal to ev, implies p square is equal to 2m into ev. So p is equal to square root of this equation. So 2m mg. Now the wavelength of electron lambda is equal to h by p, that is h by square root of 2m ev. So now substituting the mass of electron and charge of electron, and this one, that is 6.625 into 10 power minus 34 by square root of v into, and this is 2 into 9.1 into 10 power minus 31 into 1.6 into 10 to the power minus 19. Because charge of electron is 1.6 10 power minus 19 and mass of electron is 9.1 10 to the power minus 31. So by substituting all these values, this equal to, this is 6.625 10 power minus 34 by, now this is 10 to the power square root of 2 into 9.1 into 1.6 into root v, so into v into 10 to the power minus 25. And calculating this total value, we will get 12.6 divided by square root v Armstrong. So after calculating this total value, we will get 12.6 into 10 to the power 12.6 by square root v into Armstrong. So this is the general expression for de Broglie wavelength of electron. Okay. Now similarly we can calculate for a proton also, where the proton has a mass, here charge of proton is same, mass is different. So by substituting here the mass of the proton, we can calculate the wavelength associated with the proton. Similarly, if we consider neutron, then we have to substitute mass of the neutron, and there is no charge on neutron. So in that case, there is no charge for neutron. Remember this particular value. Now, Heisenberg uncertainty principle, that means uncertainty means not sure. What we can say is not sure. So what this Heisenberg uncertainty principle, because before going to this, first we have to know the dual nature of light. Dual nature means exhibiting both particle nature and wave nature. But wave and particle are two complementary properties, because if we consider a particle and wave, okay, now if we consider a particle means it possesses certain mass, a definite shape, It occupies a definite position in space. Suppose if we consider this chalk piece has occupied very lower volume with respect to the volume of this room. In this total volume of the room, this particular chalk piece occupies very small volume in this total volume of this room. Okay, so this particle can be possess a position, shape, everything. Occupies less volume. Now we can measure the position of the body. We can velocity or momentum, every physical quantity, if initial values are known. If we know the initial value or initial velocity, we can calculate the final velocity and final momentum. So these parameters, momentum, all these can be measured with this. But if we consider a wave, what is a wave? It is a disturbance spread out in this space. So wave is a disturbance spread out in this space. Now if we consider the room, the volume occupied by this wave is entirely large region. That means wave occupies a larger region of space. Suppose I am speaking, means the waves generated by me, the sound waves generated, occupy the entire volume of this room. So every corner of this room, my sound wave reaches. That means it is spread through large region, so where it is difficult to find a position. Okay, but here it occupies low volume, but it occupies larger volume. But both particle and wave, for same particle it exhibits both wave nature and wave exhibits particle nature. So that's why Heisenberg stated that at the same time we cannot find the position and momentum of the particle accurately. That means we cannot find the position and momentum of a particle accurately simultaneously, or we cannot determine the position and momentum of a particle to high degree of accuracy simultaneously. That means if we are able to measure, so that means the uncertainty in measuring that means uncertainty means probability of measuring, so not sure. Uncertainty means not sure. So the uncertainty in measuring the position, and delta p is the uncertainty in the measurement of momentum. Then this product of these two is always be greater than h by 4 pi. That means according to Heisenberg, if we are accurate in measuring the position of the body, then we cannot measure the accuracy of measuring the momentum will be less. If we measure accurately the momentum of the body particle, then we cannot measure accurately the position of the body. That means these two physical quantities cannot be measured exactly or high degree of accuracy simultaneously. Okay. And this is called Heisenberg uncertainty principle. Now if we consider, if a wave is small, that means if you consider a smaller wavelength, that means small wavelength means h by mv. When will be this wavelength will be small? When this velocity is large. Okay? When this wavelength is small means velocity is large. Okay, that means if the wavelength is small means the region occupied by this wave is small. That means we can find out the position of the body accurately, but it spreads out with greater velocity. So we cannot measure the accuracy in momentum, because mass into velocity is momentum. So momentum, we cannot measure the momentum accurately. Suppose if we consider larger wavelength, then its velocity will be less. We can measure this accurately velocity, but we cannot measure the position of the particle. So in this way, that means according to Heisenberg uncertainty principle, we cannot measure the position and momentum of the particle to high degree of accuracy simultaneously. And the product of uncertainties in the measurement of position and momentum is always greater than h by 4 pi. So this is called Heisenberg uncertainty principle. And now de Broglie proposed this matter wave theory, but can we accept that? Without experimental arrangement we cannot accept that theory. So attempts were made by scientists for the existence of these matter waves. Okay, so in that Davison and Germer, scientists named Davison and Germer, made an experiment to verify the existence of these matter waves, and they verified the existence of waves associated with electrons. So actually this Davison-Germer experiment, what they made is they made two electrons in a fine beam so that they are diffracted from a crystal structure. So by diffraction method, they verified the existence of electron waves. That means waves associated with electrons. So actually this Davison-Germer experiment was not in our syllabus. So briefly I am explaining that by diffraction method they showed that electrons beam exhibit diffraction. That means electrons possess wave nature. In that way they explained the existence of the electron waves. Okay. So according to duality of radiation, Heisenberg, de Broglie extended the wave particle duality to moving objects, and according to his hypothesis all the moving objects are associated with a wave, and that wave is called matter wave, and the wavelength of that wave is h by mv momentum, and those waves are significant in the case of microscopic particles like electrons, protons, but insignificant with massive or heavy objects. And these waves, the existence of existence of matter waves associated with electrons was experimentally verified by Davison and Germer. Okay.